The Ole Miss Rebels at number 9 in college football taking on the number 2 Georgia Bulldogs. About a 10.5-point spread here. It's going to be Saturday, 7 o'clock Eastern time on ESPN. There are some rumblings now. There's some rumblings, and I love rumblings, but I don't know if there's a whole lot to them. It might just be some gamesmanship, but let's dive in. I'll indulge. Why wouldn't I? Kirby Smart was asked on Wednesday if there's a chance that Brock Bowers could play in the game this weekend. That's 26 days after the tightrope procedure that he had done to his ankle. And here's what Kirby Smart said about him coming back. Quote, one of the first things you look at this injury is acceleration and deceleration, not GPS speed. When you decel, when your decel number and your acceleration numbers get closer to what your norm is, because we have a baseline for all these guys, then you can feel much more comfortable about it. You have to get to that point. Straight line speed is not football, unfortunately. Now, what I read into that is that he's probably not going to play. He's probably not going to play, but they didn't close the door. Meanwhile, it's all kind of dependent on the guy. I'm not a doctor, okay? I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I play golf with one, Norm Waldrop, who does the tightrope procedure at Andrews and is amazing. Great golfer too, I might add. He's like a +2 handicap, which is way too good to be an incredible doctor. But I digress. When you look at the tightrope procedure, it really is dependent on the guy. The offensive tackle for Georgia, Amarius Mims, also had a tightrope procedure and is yet to play. It's been 7 weeks. Meanwhile, Tua Tagovailoa played for Alabama 27 days after a tightrope surgery after the 2018 SEC championship game. Then he played 20 days after the tightrope procedure on the other ankle in 2019. So Tua was able to return in 4 weeks or less. Meanwhile, Amarius Mims has been 7 weeks. So it's just dependent on the guy. And it'll be real curious to see if Bowers can go out there and do it. I know he's a freak of nature. I know he takes great care of his body. But to think that he's going to be available to me is probably a little bit optimistic. This could come down to third downs because it's the weakness when it comes to Ole Miss. They are great offensively. They can run the ball and they've seen a resurgence with Quinshon Judkins after a bit of a slow start. It wasn't great for him. He was banged up, had a rib, had all sorts of issues. And now the run game started to get going. Trey Harris has developed, obviously as a legit go-to guy as a number 1 wide receiver. Jackson Dart looks much more comfortable this year. But they haven't been great on third down. They're converting just 36% of the time on third down. On the other side of the coin, Georgia is converting 55% of the time. They're the third best, defense in the country on third down too, allowing opponents just to convert 26.6% of the time. So that could be a huge, huge aspect of this game. Ole Miss might be able to move it between the 20s. They might be able to extend some drives here and there, but will they be able to do so enough against one of the best third down defenses in America? Jackson Dart has not been elite on third down too. He has 19 first downs created, but he's only completing about 51% of his passes on third down. Meanwhile, Carson Beck, 65% of his passes and 29 first downs created. So third down is a big advantage in favor of Georgia in this game. Another thing that I'll be paying close attention to with Ole Miss and Georgia, negative plays. Ole Miss, they'll give up some sacks. All right, they'll give up some sacks. It happens, okay? Especially against Georgia. It definitely happens. They give up about 2 or so a game, 2 and change, if you will. They're 78th right now in the FBS as far as sacks allowed this season. They also rank 110th in tackles for loss allowed this season, which is not good. That's about 7 a game. And we know what Georgia's all about. There's not a single team in college football that can get after you and pin their ears back with the same level of aggressiveness as Georgia can defensively. Now, they're not what they were in 22 and 21 on the defensive front. That's okay because they're pretty dang good still, but maybe not the standard they've set in recent years. Georgia's defense, there has not been a single team, though, that has had more than 370 yards of total offense against them. Now, you look at what Ole Miss has done. Their kind of line for success is 400 yards. Anytime they're held under 400, it gets a little bit dicey. They go over 400, things are looking really good. They've had 3 moments this year where they've been under 400 yards of offense. They escaped against Tulane. I know it was a 17-point margin at the end, but if you watch it, it was a much, much closer game than that. They lost to Alabama by a couple touchdowns, and they barely beat Arkansas by 7 points. So it's going to really be dependent on them getting beyond the 400-yard mark, and nobody's done that against Georgia so far this year. Another thing to consider, too, in this game, talked already about the negative plays, the sacks, playing behind the sticks. That could be a problem because the Rebels on the road are averaging 8 penalties a game. Even at home, when you take everything into account, they're 7 penalties a game for an average of about 63 yards. So if they start jumping off sides, next thing you know, they get walked back, and you're sitting at 1st and 15 as opposed to 1st and 10, you might have a productive first down play. You might have a productive second down play and still be sitting in 3rd and 7, which means Georgia's bringing in their speed and they're coming after you. You get behind the sticks on Georgia, you get off schedule against Georgia, it could get sideways pretty quickly if you're not about your business. So far, a couple trends this year. Ole Miss is 4-1 against the spread in their last 5 games as an underdog, and Georgia is 4-10-1 against the spread in their last 15 as a home favorite. I like Georgia to win the game, but I do think Ole Miss will battle. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. I think Georgia will get their points. I think Ole Miss will get their points, but ultimately, I think Georgia will be way too much for Ole Miss in the second half of this football game. I like them winning the game 38-28, right around there. So about right on the number. If I had to take it one side or the other, I'd probably take the points.